Gaze reading where the greats drop by. Trendy authors tell us all the who, what, and why. Anyone can listen, cause we're spoiler free. Gaze reading, from Pulitzer stars to book club picks, where the curious minds can get their fix. So you say you're not gay, well that's okay. There's something for everyone. Gaze reading.
Welcome to Gay's Reading. I'm your host, Jason Blitman, and if you have joined us before, welcome back. And if this is your first time listening, I'm very happy to have you. We are also over on YouTube. You could check out our YouTube channel where you can watch some of these great conversations that I've been having. You could find the link in the link tree on our Instagram page, as well as in our show notes. And if you could like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, it helps make sure that other book lovers can find Gay's Reading as well. Follow us on social media at Gay's Reading. We have a new giveaway every single week, and you won't want to miss those, including today, Tuesday, October 8th, is the last day for the current giveaway that's going on, and it is for 4 books from the new imprint Bindery Books. Go check it out at Gay's Reading on Instagram. If you have been listening, you've heard me say the spiel about Aardvark Book Club. I'm thrilled to share that we are partnering with Aardvark Book Club to provide an exclusive introductory discount. Listen, Aardvark Book Club, they already have their books for $17, which is an incredible deal. But if you use the code Gay's Reading, new members in the United States can get their first book for $4, and it's free shipping. Aardvarkbookclub.com. And if you are unfamiliar, Aardvark Book Club is a monthly book subscription shipping to the US and Canada. On the first of every month, they drop 5 to 6 new releases across a range of genres, from literary fiction to fantasy to romance. And they focus on curating a mix of buzzy books, new releases, and other under-the-radar gems. On today's episode, we have Rivers Solomon, who is here to talk to us about their new book, Model Home. It is so perfect for this time of year, and the cover is out of control gorgeous. Come on. So I'm so excited that they're here, and our guest gay reader, holy moly, the one and only Margaret Cho. So you're not going to want to miss that. Stick around to the end to check out my conversation with Margaret Cho, hear about what she's reading. And that's all the housekeeping. Welcome to Gay's Reading, Rivers Solomon, protein powder in coffee. I'm very curious about this.
I just discovered this maybe a few days ago because I can't drink.
This is very new.
It's like a few weeks.
Okay,
it's a few
okay,
weeks.
okay.
I just got tired of having like protein shakes with the protein powder. I was into it for a while. I felt like a child. I was like, ooh, this is my glass of milk. Like that's what it felt like. And I was like, I'm repounding myself, whatever. And that was
Drama.
But then I was like, I just need a way to just not have it be like an extra thing that I'm doing. And like, I also don't want to be a protein shake person. That's just no
shade. No, right.
That's not me.
Right.
That's not part of my narrative.
Right.
But then let me try it in coffee. And I did. I love a smoothie. They're so versatile. I used to hate them because I felt like I didn't hate them, but I would have never really got into making them at home because I find the blender and all of that to just be a lot of fuss.
To clean up. Yeah.
Yes. But my friend suggested, it must be like 4 or 5 years ago now, getting like one of the bullet blenders. And that has made it so much easier that it's like a one.
Yes. And that's what I use.
Yeah.
It's complicated. You have your metal straw. You have to clean the metal straw. There's a lot to clean. With smoothies, there's a lot of schmutz everywhere.
There is.
The nooks and crannies and everything. Anyway.
There's a lot of nooks and crannies.
Speaking of nooks and crannies.
I know. I was like, oh, that's a great segue.
Oh my God. So ridiculous. Rivers Solomon, tell me about Model Home. What is your elevator pitch for the book? Do you have one yet?
Oh, man.
Now's your moment to workshop it.
You start with that. Okay. No, that one's workshop. Okay.
This is a safe space.
Okay. All right. What do I say? I say different things to different people depending on what I think they're into, to be honest, which probably isn't fair. For some people, I just say, this is my take on a haunted house novel. Or sometimes I'll say, this is a haunted house novel, but instead of the old sort of crumbling house that we get, it takes place in a new build in the suburbs. And already that's a different setting that we get that's enough to make it interesting, at least to me anyway. I don't know what interests other people always. But my pitch that's a little bit more fleshed out is sort of in the aftermath of having grown up in a house where terrible, inexplicable things happened to you. And what's it like to live it? What is it like to live in the aftermath of having grown up in a house that wanted to kill you, and then having to return to that house when something happens to your parents in that house? So that's what I say.
I would probably layer on top of that, on top of both things, that it's a family story too.
Yes, absolutely. That's key. It's a dysfunctional family story.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the siblings especially are at the center of it and their sibling relationship. I think there's also a lot of like mother-child stuff and all of those familial relationships. But I do think the siblings as well are really strong.
Yeah. There were so many things in the story that were like so relatable, and the characters are so richly drawn. And yet, I don't want to use the term generic because that is not true, but they are so specific. And yet there is an element that where you can so see the skeleton of them as a part of you as well. Like I saw myself in these characters that I have nothing in common with on the page, but I was like, oh my God, this is a version of X, Y, or Z, which was a very interesting thing to experience.
Yeah, no, I definitely, yes. When I think about my characters, I try to think about how I tend to think visually. So I'll think about visual media first. So I'll think about like TV characters, especially ones that were really big and larger than life, because it's really easy. I think when you have a person performing a role for that character to become like very like alive and oh yes, I know that person. Like with all of those sort of videos. So I try to think and like use those kinds of details. Even if I don't quite cast it, I'll often I never reveal it, but like a secret kind of inspiration for the character.
I love that you said, the first thing you said was, I'll never reveal it. Just in case Jason wants to ask, I'm not going to tell you.
I had that all. Yes.
I'll just imagine in my own head.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
But it's like Breakfast Club. You have the job. And obviously, that's not all there is to a person, but it's like a helpful little shorthand to get into.
I'm actually so glad you said that because for the last 3 minutes, have been mortified that I use the term generic but what you just said is exactly, I think, what I was thinking. There are these sort of, especially in families, there are these archetypes.
Archetypes, yes, that's the word.
Yeah, I am the oldest of 3. Yeah. My mother-in-law is not the oldest, but is the oldest. And that that happens in this book, right? And so I was like, oh, I see these people. Anyway, okay, archetypes. That's what not generic archetypes. Very richly drawn characters. I really felt like it's about being a child of the 90s.
With anything I write, the question of time changes a lot when I'm writing it. Because it's the book set in 2023 or 2024. Like that's always a kind of a question you have to think about, like when you're writing something contemporary, or or the 2000, and in which case, I wanted to write a contemporary novel. So I go back in time. Then they grew up in this house in the 90s, right? So same. Not that I grew up in the house.
Sure. But if you were to go back to your house, you grew up there in the 90s.
Yeah. And I just think I think there's a little bit about sort of the technology of that time that's really interests me. I think because I'm a child of the 90s, I am like, oh, there's so much interesting stuff happening culturally. I think actually that my characters are slightly older than me. I can't remember what exact ages and everything that I settled on for them. So I was very much a millennial in the sense that that's when things like in 2000, that's when things really, like that's when I was really coming of age in that time frame, as opposed to the slightly older millennials who really were full on into the 90s and stuff. Right. But I don't know, it was so cute and grungy, wasn't it? That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are roughly the same age, and so I totally get the grunginess. But there are 2 very specific things that I was like, oh, this is so of the time. Yeah. One is silly, one is trauma. But what?
Okay, like the full spectrum of life, like that.
Silly to trauma. That's our journey that we're on. Oh my God.
Hopefully that the journey is trauma to silly. Like that maybe is like
fair. I don't know. I would probably say that there are hills and valleys, right? Of trauma and silly. Yeah. Thing one, and we could probably talk about this for the rest of our time together, is the idea of when you grow up scanning social media for the people that you grew up with to see who's queer now. I was like, this is
Yeah.
so specific. I
Yes.
have literally gone through my yearbooks to be like,
Yeah.
oh, let me search this person's name.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah. No, it is.
Did
Yeah.
you have
No,
any
but, like,
interesting discoveries? Because
my first boyfriend. Yes. Like I was in 5th grade, he was in 6th grade. We met
yes.
yeah. So love that for us.
Yes, we love
Like,
this. There was clearly like kindred spirits.
yeah. Queer for queer.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
so funny because growing
Yeah.
up, I look back and like all of my close friends, the people that I
Yeah.
really connected with as early as
Yeah.
elementary school are now queer.
Yes. Same. Absolutely. Same. And like some people I haven't even had to like go back and search for. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
just
no,
kind
you
of
just know. It's in the
which still
world, right?
exists.
You're like, I
Yes.
didn't have to search for them because in our 20s we had that fun night together. To the people not watching on YouTube, Rivers just covered themselves in their face with their coffee mugs.
Hold on. Yeah. I do think the first boyfriend one was the one that I found the most like cute and silly and fun.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, look at you. A little picture of you and your boyfriend. I love this.
We love this journey for him. Oh my god, that's
Yeah.
so
Yes. Exactly.
funny.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know. It's interesting. No one I think surprised me from like my youth, but I have now been like back in touch with some people I went to college with or with contemporary open-mindedness. I feel like that's the best way to phrase it.
Mhm.
And people being less afraid of stepping out of the binary. I have some what I would have referred to as like relatively pretty straight friends from college who are
Yes.
now like,
Okay.
yeah, I'm not really totally straight. And I'm like, oh, that's
We love
awesome.
it.
Like totally. And that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that they're not still married to their
Yeah.
opposite sex partner.
Mhm.
They're just like able to feel comfortable in their skin, to be freer. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's really cool to live in this
Yeah.
space now.
Yeah. It's really funny that you mentioned that sort of aspect specifically because one, I do feel like I have a different experience than most people growing up in the 90s just because my best friend who I met when I was in 4th grade, he was gay and came out to me in 5th grade. So I was like, oh wow, that's great for you. Not me though. But
Why are you telling me that?
so I like, and my mom was always very progressive, and I had queer adults in my life
Uh-huh.
and stuff, and all of that. But right now, so that openness, I felt like it's increased 1,000-fold, and like, it's definitely yes, seeing that more people like feeling open and being able to do that. But the books that I'm writing currently, I guess it's Gen X because
Mhm.
so the main character starts when she's 13, and it takes place in '93. I guess that's the age. I think that is 80. Is 1980 the cutoff?
It's,
I never
there's
know.
definitely a blurry line there.
It's the playlist, right? And thing even just that difference. So I would have been 13 in 2001 or 2, I think,
Mhm.
versus 93. Just that over that year span, I think how much even changed even over
Oh yeah.
that. And like
Technology
not, yeah.
alone.
Yes, yes. Even if it was just at the library, being able to look up certain stuff,
Mhm.
even like in a Texas conservative suburb, like that was a thing that I was able to do that I don't think would have been available to do in 93.
Absolutely. In 5th grade, I remember I don't remember what the project was, but there was something where we had to write our favorite website. And we didn't have a computer at home at the time. So we didn't have the internet. And I think I literally remember writing yahoo.com was my favorite website. Cause like what
Yeah,
website was I going to?
yeah, for sure.
So funny. Something that I find very interesting is the title. The book
Mm.
is called Model Home. And I didn't want to talk about this first because I feel like we could have talked about this for the entire conversation and just like breaking it down
Mhm.
because the term model, I think, means so many things, right? It's representation, it's the
Yes.
pristine, it's setting a tone, setting the example, and then the word home versus the word house. What was the journey coming to the title for you? Obviously, this isn't a spoiler, but the house in the book was the model home of the complex.
Yeah.
So there's
Yes.
that sort of literal representation too. But how did you come to this
So,
title?
like, this is one of those rare, beautiful titles for me anyway, that there was no journey. Like, it came to me instantly, like, that this is like the perfect representation of something very central about this book.
Yeah.
I think what's important about a model, or the type of model I'm thinking about, is essentially that it's fake. The model is not real. It's a picture of a thing or an idea of a thing. It's an ideal that could never be reached by anyone. Like, that's built into it. So when I think of this, yes, they live in the sort of the model home, or the show home or show house, as it's sometimes called in these sort of like new developments, where they're all furnished, and the people they want to move into the neighborhood, they can have a look about, imagine what their life would be like. And I think that there's an aspect in which I think Esri, that's the main character, their mother is in a lot of ways after that. This ideal of what a family should be and what a home should be, and that's trying to achieve this model, and it's in many ways very much a tragic flaw. And so that's why model home. And I think how we all are like trying to create our own homes and families and communities and all of these things is there is that, I don't know, this romanticization or of what we want or could be that it never is. Yeah.
It's so interesting that you say model is not real and is something to aspire to, because thinking about something else that comes up later in the book is Esri talks about like finding a model of good people, like how you can who you can model yourself after, right?
Yeah.
And then so thinking about the word in that context, suddenly it's, wait a minute, you can't reach that level.
Yeah.
Right. There's there's something to like have a goal and aspire to, but
Yeah.
it's just an
Yeah.
example.
It's just an example. And I also think models, when they're like a mannequin or like an actual model, where like the point is to show off something in this sort of best possible light, to remove all sort of humanity and particularness of an individual is removed from it. So there's that. And I think Ezra in particular is a very kind of unrealized, is the word that I kind of want to use, like not knowing maybe who they are. And so like perhaps sometimes latching on to something like a model or an archetype or a character or a doll, like something that sort of feels cohesive.
My husband and I talk a lot about the idea that there are not many older gay men that we can model our life after. And when I also thinking about that right now, I'm just like, oh, another word I could use is example, right? There's not an example of something that can represent our future. And when I think about that word, which has a less sexy connotation, but it like means the same thing contextually. It's like calling it an example home, right? But that's what it is. It's showing what it can be. You're like, wait, that's certainly not as sexy. And
sorry, I'm not able to get example out of.
You're welcome. I just messed up your whole book tour.
Love that example.
But right.
Like, no. Yeah.
And when you think about an example, when I think of if an artist shows you an example of how to do something, the idea is you then take it and make it your own.
Yes.
Whereas
the idea of an example is also, this is one of several possibilities.
Right.
Like there's an implied range of things. Like, in fact, you will often say, here's an example. Don't use the example when you're doing, the assignment. Whatever.
You literally don't do the example. And yet model, which like, again, contextually can mean a version of the same thing, really comes across in a different way. And that's this little epiphany that I just had. So you're welcome.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's interesting because I think because this is something that happens when we grow up, anybody growing up, and a lot of people, regardless of what kind of childhood they have, often will have a sense of, I don't want to do things the way that it was done with me. But there is this sort of lack of, okay, then what? And I think all of the siblings in model homes have their version of people. How do I create a life if it's not trying to be in a model home?
Yeah. Because they didn't have an example set for them that was other than what they know.
Where did I? Yeah.
Okay, I cannot believe it has been 35 minutes and we have not talked about ghosts.
Yeah.
I'm at a loss for words because I don't want to spoil anything, and I also also have so many things to talk about.
Can I just say, sorry to interrupt, it's so hard to talk about this book without I don't spoil anything.
Right.
Don't
No,
spoil
we're not. And
anything.
we're not spoiling anything.
I've been really tricky myself.
Yeah. And I think
Like,
that the idea of a family story within the context of a turned on its head haunted house story, people can probably assume or imply like the sorts of ghosts that we'll come across. In
yeah,
the book, there are metaphorical ghosts, there are trauma ghosts, there are literal ghosts. And
yeah,
a question for you is, do you think we can escape our ghosts?
yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah. And that is what makes the book so scary.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. I've been writing about ghosts for a long time. My first book is called An Unkindness of Ghosts. When I was doing my MFA and I was in a poetry workshop, the professor in this particular workshop separated us into 3 or 4 groups and gave us that she thought were like thematically similar. And I was in the ghost group. I certainly can't escape.
Would you say that's your archetype?
Yes,
That's your writer
absolutely.
archetype?
Yes, it is. And I don't think that I guess there's the notion of what does escape mean?
Mhm.
Can they perhaps be less of a terrifying or upsetting force? Yes,
Mhm.
I think so, potentially. And then for that, there's also all of the various cliche things like facing your past, things like
Sure.
that does that. I think in Model Home, a big thing is shame and secrets and the way that's a space that ghosts very much can thrive and flourish in
Yeah.
as well. But we live like the past, like it does live, like the past, it literally lives. It's that.
And that's what is so fascinating. It's even things that are dead. I was thinking about like, are ghosts even dead if they are haunting you, right?
Yeah,
If they're a part of
yeah,
you,
yeah,
if they're present,
yeah,
what does it mean
yeah,
to be alive versus dead? Which
yeah.
is, yeah, it's different than physically living or being present. What do you think happens to previous versions of ourselves?
Oh man. Okay. So based on like the first part of that question, I thought the second part was going to go in a different direction. So I had been preparing my answer for the wrong question.
Oh,
So they're like,
now
oh,
I'm
no.
curious to know what that question you thought was.
So this question, I don't know. I feel like I think about this a lot because I'm going through a lot of changes right now. Like I'm in this full huge gender, like I'm like going for a much more like feminized, sort of feminine, traditionally feminine leaning like presentation than I have like in the last
Mm.
5 to 10 years. Like I thought I was done with this,
Hmm.
all of these things. I got my eyebrows waxed for the first time in 15 years. So I certainly thought that was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think we all have a natural fluidity, right? I'm not just talking about gender, right? And I think this is somewhat gestured at in the book. We're always growing and changing,
Yeah.
and different phases and parts of our life will bring out new things in us. Sometimes certain things are buried and then something causes them to be reawakened.
Hmm.
So I don't really think that the old me's, and the old us's, I don't think that I think that they are always a part of
Yeah.
us.
The way that you were just talking, I'm having a lot of epiphanies today. I feel like maybe I'm in therapy right now. I think that it is not uncommon for us to think about past and present and future as linear.
Mhm.
And suddenly I was like, oh, it's more like a snowball, right? Because we're like collecting these
Yes.
pieces and building on top
Yes.
of it rather than looking
Yes.
backwards, right? Like
Yes.
the piece of you that once upon a time liked waxing your eyebrows did not go
Yeah.
away. It was not
Yeah.
far away behind you. It's deep inside of you.
Yeah.
And that is
Yeah.
a very different way of thinking about it.
Yeah. I think I love that. And I've also thought about this particular question a lot with relationships and how sometimes you can get to a point like with a person. I don't know what I ever saw in this person,
Hmm.
or I think this is a fairly common experience, or not being able to relate to a previous version of yourself sometimes. That is definitely a thing that can happen, whether it's like evolving like political beliefs or any number of things happen. But I
Hmm.
like much more recently, I've been able to like, I think part of it is about there's an aspect of acceptance to it. And once you have that acceptance and let go of shame a little bit, like I can go back and I'm able to access those past selves more and be
Hmm.
like, you know what? I do know what you were thinking. I actually do know what. Yeah.
It's also, I talk all the time about my frustrations with binary things in general. And for
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
first time, I'm thinking about past, present, and future as binary ideas, right? Like
Mm.
it is not just your past because it is a part of you.
Yeah.
And therefore it is
Yes.
also your present and is also your future.
Yes.
And it is this sort of
Yes.
blended,
Yes.
mixed thing.
It is. And it's
I
all
feel like I
like
just
sort
had a
of
breakthrough.
happening all at once. I love this piece so much.
Oh my God.
That's what I love about like writing and talking and living. Like I love being able to connect.
Yeah.
Like with
And there's
we're all each other to our own on our own. Like we're all on our own journeys, but we're also on a journey together, and we're like
totally
in a network.
well, and something
Yeah.
so specific in the book that I've been thinking about is the difference between moving on and running away. And
Yeah.
again, back to binary, running away. You cannot run away from these things that are a part of you. You can
Yeah.
move on though. And that's
Yeah.
a different thing.
And also sometimes, and to even further, like sometimes you need to run away, like sometimes for your safety. So like running away, like it might have this bad connotation to it, like running away from your problems. Like actually, sometimes you do want to run away from your problem. It's definitely the correct solution sometimes. So yeah, there's that as well.
Yeah, but if it's like running away from a thing that's tied around your ankle, right?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how can you
Yeah.
run away from something that's a piece of you?
Yeah. You can't run away from yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Not that many people don't try.
Right. And that's what's so
Yeah.
interesting. And I think talking about getting over shame and coming to terms with certain things, I think it's like when you understand and respect your full self, then you don't need to run away from those pieces of you. You can move on. You can bury them in the snowball, right? But that
Yes.
doesn't, but they will be a part of you because that's who we are. There's a quote in the book talking about, I think often about what is possible and what is impossible. What makes something possible versus impossible?
A writer who's done a lot of speculative fiction and that, and I say sometimes in my various bios that the realm that I live in is like the realm of the imaginary. And in the realm of the imaginary, nothing is impossible, right? And I prefer to think about in that term that like everything is possible. Like we maybe don't have the means, resources, ideas, etc. right at the specific moment, but a lot of things do feel impossible until if we can just imagine for a second that it is possible, though, what would we do and how would that change the way that we act? And I especially think about that in terms of like various modes of like rebellion. Like they're imagining that more is possible than maybe feels like what is possible is really important. I like to think that everything is possible. Yeah, I do. I don't know. I like, but no, I'm not like saying that in a corny, hopeful way because people who know me know that I am a pretty like despairing person.
That is not your archetype.
It's not like that's not part of my narrative.
It is very off-brand.
It is though. It's not me. So yeah, but I do think yeah,
I was just talking to an author
disagree?
about the idea
Okay.
of imagination and how important that is. And when I think about or until that conversation, when I thought about imagination, I would think about things that were sort of fantastical. But really the idea of imagination is just being able to think about things that didn't exist before, like a cell
Yes.
phone. Right?
Yes.
To someone
Yes.
that's fantastical, but that's also our
Yeah.
reality. And because someone was able
Yeah.
to imagine that, it meant that
Yeah.
anything was possible. Right. So I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
I think a lot about you use sort of the example of the cell phone. I think a lot about even much more like basic technologies like the wheel. And like I do think there's a natural sort of inspiration for that and say like a log or something like that rolls that. But I also like to think if I were just here in this world, could I have ever really dreamed up the wheel? Like if we lived in a sort of a completely where it wasn't just a basic thing in my life, and these other very sort of basic technologies that we have, I feel like it could be quite a leap. I think in the book, the question of impossible possible is posed about this idea of isn't it? I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm misremembering it. Might be about the idea of the supernatural.
It definitely is.
Is it? Yes. And yeah, so that's the context in which it exists. And I'm still like, I think that for me, yeah, being open to all possibilities, I think there's no harm in it at the very
And we also certainly
at the
haven't proved that it doesn't exist.
Sure. And I don't know, there's so much that we don't know. And I don't know. We live in a very vast universe.
Very overwhelming.
It is. It is very overwhelming. Don't look up at the night sky too long. Okay, do it, and we're seeing the tiniest fraction. I tend to think that most things are possible, and I was gonna say, I was gonna give you a caveat. Maybe it's not possible that I'm like going to be like an Olympic gymnast or something like that. Some sort of thing. But you know what? Maybe I could see a universe in which that occurs, actually. I've seen enough really inspiring sports films to potentially
Right. There is
imagine
that
that
teeny
trajectory.
tiny nugget where you're thinking
Yes.
about Denzel Washington and Remember the Titans. You're like,
Yes.
make him play football too.
Or that woman in that movie, Naiad.
Yeah.
She failed so many times. She did something in her 60s
I was just going to
that
say, she
couldn't
wasn't
do,
young.
like in her 20s.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Oh my God, Rivers, what are we going to do?
River Solomon, Olympic gymnast.
Maybe I'll be your coach. I'm going to learn how to be a gymnastics coach.
Yes, so this is like, message to everybody, get rid of your limiting beliefs.
Oh my God.
I'll see you on the mat.
I didn't watch any of the Olympics this year. I'm a terrible
Really?
world
Oh,
human.
I'm so lucky because I was actually in the US while the Olympics were happening, and I was staying at a friend's who has a TV, and that was just all in all day. So I just was able to absorb it.
One of the things I did want to ask, and you don't have to list too many things, but this could potentially be uplifting as we end. Esri's therapist suggests that they come up with a list of 5 activities that could ground them when they're feeling away and unreal. Is there anything, an activity that you feel like is a good grounding activity? Oh, drinking your coffee.
So many. I'm a bath person.
Oh.
Water in general. Also swimming. That's obviously not something that's good for just immediately doing in the moment. But anything that's like a strong, really lovely sensory experience. And I think hot water and water in general can really bring that on. Hugging yourself.
Oh, yes. Let's do it.
And
Oh,
even
that's
also,
nice.
this is something that we only do. Covering your face is something that we tend to do like when we're like embarrassed, but actually do is like it can actually feel quite comforting and like you feel your hands against your
Like
skin.
warm palms on your eyes.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are good. All right. Should we end rubbing our hands together and covering our face?
They're just like combine.
Oh, wash your hands first so that your skin doesn't break out. Model home. Rivers, congratulations.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me here and for talking with me. I've had so much fun.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy to have you. I can't wait for everyone to check it out. By the time this airs, it will have come out a week or 2 ago.
Read it.
And it's funny, I read some of it. When you're watching a scary movie, you can cover your eyes and listen. When you're reading a book that is making you feel things, you can't cover your eyes because that's how you're consuming it. But there were a few things where I was like squinting, like just in case I needed to close my eyes.
I've done that. Yeah.
I was like, am I okay? Am I going to be okay reading this?
Yeah. Jason, thank you.
Today's guest gay reader, you may know her from starring in movies like Face Off and Fire Island. Everyone from John Travolta to Bowen Yang have been this Incredible Humans co-star. I mean, really, she's just one of those names that everybody knows because she's, been on TV in like The Masked Singer, hosted a podcast, done countless TV shows, Grammy nominated, Emmy nominated, stand-up comedian, actress, singer, songwriter. But for me, I know her because I have the image of her face buried in the crook of her elbow, burned into my brain. The first fag hag for all of us millennials, notorious CHO, Margaret Cho.
Hey, what an amazing introduction. Thank you very much.
Of course. The list is too long.
Amazing. Thank
Do
you.
you feel like that's your career? Do you like...
I mean, I guess I do lots of different things every day,
Yeah.
which is great. So, I really enjoy that aspect of it. That's one of the wonderful things about my work. But I always think I'm also just still a stand-up comic. That's kind of the big part of my job.
That's like the core, the
yeah,
nucleus.
so I always do that. But everything else is always really fun.
Do you ever feel like because that's the core that people expect you to just be funny all the time?
Well, I think, you want to try to be funny. Like, you want to try your best. So that's, like, in general, I think that's how I feel.
I think everybody probably wants to know how's your mom?
She's doing great.
Because
She's doing great. She and my dad now are at this really fabulous assisted living, which they love.
Amazing.
And my dad is really popular because he has his own teeth and he can walk unassisted. So he's the only person in the whole facility that has no use of a cane or a walker or a wheelchair. He's just like running
mazel
around.
tov.
And my mom is really proud of him. And they're doing great. She's doing great.
Does he like chew things for people?
He probably should. I'm going to ask him to next time. I'm going to ask him to choose something. Sometimes I have some trouble, so I'm going to ask him to choose them for me. That's a
Oh my
great
God,
thing.
that's so funny. I know, honest. Every time I have been flossing so much more now than I think I was even 2 years ago, because I'm like, I want to be that person in my 80s who has my teeth still.
Well, you have
like-
to. You have. Also, there's always that one gay breath with terrible gay breath. You know that gay breath. That's always one
Right.
queen that has
The old queen with the gay breath.
with the gay breath, which
I
is like,
know.
girl.
And it's a little bit like mothballs. You're like, is this how?
I
Is
know.
this just what's?
What is the moth? Like,
Mhm.
that's like the weird, the camphor. Where does that, like, eucalyptus camphor smell come from? Like, that's,
Where does it come from? I know.
it is like mothballs.
Yes, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, is it like gifted to you when you hit a certain age?
There's
I'm very.
something, I don't know.
have a lot of Googling to
it's
do.
It's a real old gay thing, but there's always one queen with just that gay breath that
I
you're like,
know.
girl, just, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm worried that it's me. You know, also, if I don't smell it, then I'm like, what if it's me? I think somebody
No,
would
I'm
tell
sure
me.
it's-
Hopefully.
I'm sure they would. So this has come up in your life so much lately. I don't know. I wonder why, but everyone has been talking to you about the bookstore that your parents
Yes.
owned when you were a kid. I feel like
Yes.
all the things I've been looking at recently,
Yes.
that has come up,
Yes.
and I was like, well, Gay's reading. I need to be the one to talk about it the most.
Wonderful.
What was that like growing up in a gay bookstore in San Francisco?
Well, we had famous writers like Armistead Maupin who would do book signings there. And
previous Gay's reading guest.
yeah, he's a great guy. He's a
so
great guy.
fantastic.
And, you know, we had sold a lot of Quentin Crisp. We had a lot of John
Mm.
Waters. We had a lot of Ouija, like, you know, the photography books, lots of fashion books, like, you know. So, and then we had a rolling rack, like a wind-up rack with was Harlequin romances, but for men. So it was like,
Mm.
you know, a man with a tank top and cut-off jean shorts standing by a lake in the moonlight,
Did he have long flowy hair?
long flowy hair, and the novel would be
okay.
called Cobalt. And different shades of blue, you know, and you had these like gay romance novels and Honcho magazine, Honcho, Blue Boy, and all those things. So I just remember growing up like around all of this stuff and always reading. Like reading was like everything, you know.
Were you reading Cobalt?
I was reading Cobalt because it was kind of boring to me, I guess.
Oh, funny.
It was like, I don't know what this is about. Like, all those sort of romance novels are sort of boring to me. I was just more into, like, I love the John Waters. I love the Cookie Mueller. Dr. Cookie Mueller was a great writer. Anything that was sort of about film or anything that was about, like, just the Satanic Bible. I love that kind of stuff. Like, to me, anything transgressive, you know, so.
How old were you at that point?
Probably 10, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You know, that was like my whole upbringing.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so, but you were always a reader.
Always a reader. Even like just trashy stuff. Like I love a beauty, like when a celebrity puts out a beauty book. Like there's one, like a Diane von Furstenberg that's really good. The Sophia Loren is really good. The Raquel Welch one was really like exacting. And
was there anything that you took away from any of those books that
a
have stuck
horrible
with you?
recipe that Raquel Welch had, which was like no salt. It was like every green vegetable, it was like 7 green vegetables, no salt and water, and you just boil it. What an awful concoction.
And what's that supposed to do for you?
You just
like
eat it every
make
day.
your skin nicer or something?
Yeah, it was like you
okay.
just get your vegetables in by hook or by crook. Like she was like, it's not about how delicious it is. You know, it's not amusing to anyone if you eat bread. That's what she said. It's not amusing. And I'm like, you know what? I think it is kind of amusing to me. But it was like, I love a beauty book. Like, to me, that's the Marlene Dietrich has the best because hers is the ABCs. So hers is set out like a dictionary or like a like a dictionary, or like, I don't know, like a thesaurus or something. Like, it's like a, every letter has a word that will bring you to beauty. It's a really good one.
I have to find this.
That's a really good one. The Marlene Dietrich, I think, ABCs to beauty. Really good.
That is insane. I have to read it just because, like, how can there be that many letters? Or how can each letter have a thing?
Each one has a thing. And I think Marlene Dietrich's recipe for beauty was drink only hot water, no alcohol, only hot water, not cold water, not a soda, for God forbid, and eat only every 3 days.
Well...
And no butter, only lard, like pig fat. No butter. But if you have to put something on your bread, it's like lard. Which
that's insane.
And then if you sleep,
L is for lard.
Yeah, L is for lard. If you sleep, it's better for you if you sleep with someone. It can be a child, it can be an animal, it can be a man. Better if it's like an offspring or an animal. Because that recharges your batteries when you sleep next to a human being.
So many follow-up questions, and I need to find this book so that
It's
I can.
It's a good one. You got to find it. It's really good.
I'm sure it's like out of print or something.
But at that, I think in the 60s and the 70s, and like maybe probably the 50s too, it was like they would just get like an actress, and then you would write a beauty Bible or a beauty book about sort of their memoir, but it was also like a guide to beauty, which we don't have anymore. Maybe the only person that does it is probably Dita Von Teese, because she's so like retro coded, but
right, because I was going to say it's very like an anti-beauty movement now, right?
Yeah,
it's like not about the beauty.
Yeah, or you'll have like a wellness influencer maybe write a book of like smoothie recipes or something, but you don't really have sort of a beauty my regimen.
No one's talking about lard in the books these days.
No,
it's a shame. Maybe
I know, we miss it.
We do. Okay, so that's what you were reading once upon a time. What are you reading now?
Today, my book is very good. It's Hunger by Roxane Gay, who I love her writing. Which I only read. I don't read her books. I read her like art or magazine articles and opinion pieces, and I'm like very much avid reader of her kind of daily output as a writer. Yeah, but I've not actually read any of the books she's written. So this is the first Roxane Gay book I've read, and it's just devastating.
Yeah,
it's a really. She writes so simply, and it almost like when you're a writer that good, you don't have to reach. Like you can be as simple, and the chapters are like 1 page or 2 pages, and you can be as simple as that, and she gets to the core of what she's talking about, which is just it's a book about hunger and her relationship with her body, and it's really I identify so much with it, and I really I admire her.
I'm not a huge fan of Goodreads as an app to track books, but Roxane Gay writes reviews on Goodreads, and her reviews are like 4 sentences long, but they are profound.
So good. She's so funny. She's really could be a comedian too. Like she's just really she cuts to the bone, and it's really hilarious sometimes. But yeah, she's really great. Along with her, I think she's just so incredible. But I've been in an Eve Babbitt's, only Eve Babbitt's,
like a kick.
Like I read like Eve's Hollywood, and then all of Sex and Rage, and then all of like these. Just her writing style is so weird. But then also I've been reading her biographies and stuff, and like it's just. I want to live in the LA that she was living in, not necessarily in the LA that I live in. And I recognize her LA, but it's not like that anymore. She's great.
And part of why I'm doing this is because when I'm a late in life reader, and all of a sudden when I started talking about books that I was reading, all of my friends were like, oh, I just read such and such. I just read such and such. I was like, wait a minute. Everyone's a reader and we've not talked about this before.
Yeah.
And so every single person I've talked to for this series has like, oh, I'm reading 10 books at a time. I just talked to James Scully,
Yeah,
who
oh, I
did Fire
love
Island with you.
my fully Scully, my baby Scully. Yes.
Adorable. He's reading 2 books at a time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, who would have thought James Scully?
Yeah. Well, you got to
that's-
read. Well, I read I have a specific time that I read every day to go to sleep.
What's that?
But I read to go to
you're a nighttime
sleep.
reader?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
read so that I'm not looking at a screen. It's like the one time a day that I'm not looking at a screen, and I actually read a physical book.
Can you manage like more than 3 pages before falling asleep? Because I can't read before bed because I'll read a page and a half and I conk out.
It depends on what I'm reading. Sometimes it's so exciting, I have to
Yeah.
stay up. You know, like so I have to limit. Like I can't do any Patricia Highsmith, or else I'm up all night.
Right.
It's like doing-
Right. Then there's
it's
like
like-
the opposite problem.
It's like doing coke. Like I can't even do a line of Patricia Highsmith because I'll fucking for days.
Oh my God. That's
So,
so funny.
You just have to like figure out what it is. But I like Eve Babbitt's because it's just very calming. And Roxane Gay, it's much more emotional and like it's a little hard to read before bed because you just get ducked by it and you want to think about it. But definitely depends.
Yeah. I wrote to our friend Reese.
Oh,
Arroquan
Reese, my
this
baby
morning.
Reese. Yes,
I
I love that
love
book.
this.
I love that
She
book.
was incredible. Loved having her on the show.
She's a
The
great
book
writer.
is so good.
She's such a great
Such
writer.
a good writer.
Yeah.
Well, that was my first little not red flag. Red flags are bad. But that was my first like ears moment where I was like, Margaret Cho in conversation with RO?
Yeah.
She's clearly a reader.
I love that book and I love her writing and I just love her. She's so interesting and her process is so amazing. And I mean, I just love the way that book is laid out and how she's, going about these stories and how you're going into this very intimate story that's really sexy and really hot, but also kind of like, it's very deep. I'm so into
I know it's like a slim book, but really packs a punch.
so much in there.
For our listeners, we're talking about Exhibit by R.O. Kwan,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic.
Amazing.
In your 2002 special, you talked about so much gay culture being in the media at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Reflecting back on that, are you like, what was I thinking? There was hardly any gay culture compared to today. I guess it's all relative.
It is relative to like, I mean, it's like so weird to think of. And most of the gay culture was commandeered by straight people. It was like straight people being gay for our benefit, which is like so
Right.
weird to think about what we would accept
Mhm.
because we were just so like starving for anything. But I
Right.
still think like was the beginnings of feeling like you were being seen and heard. That's good,
Yeah.
but not enough.
Yeah, it was interesting watching that. Now
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, amazing that's how it felt in
Yeah.
2002.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked about what you're reading. What's going on? What are you doing in your life? What are you promoting? You're going on tour.
I'm on
You're going to be in
tour.
some cities.
I'm on tour. I'm also on the new TV show Percy Jackson with Sandra Bernhard and Kristen Schaal.
Oh no way! That's so funny. I did the original casting for the off-Broadway production of the musical The Lightning Thief.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. That's great. That's
Oh,
great.
that's so funny.
I am playing a very phantasmagorical creature. This show is very, very wild, and so it's exciting. I have a music album coming out, and it's gay pop. The gay pop girls.
What?
It's very gay pop, so it's like very much in that realm of like Chappell Roan and like pop music that I'm very excited about. So that'll be later this year.
Insane.
Yes.
I also just talked to Leah Delaria.
I love Leah.
Amazing, but also huge reader and freaking musician.
Yeah.
Like the two of you, I can't stand it.
Leah's such a beautiful singer. Like she's outstanding. She's really incredible. So yeah.
You're such a multi-hyphenate.
Yes.
I'm obsessed. I'm so grateful that you're here. You have said learning keeps you young, and I think reading is one of those things that really
That's right.
helps keep us young. And frankly, part of this too, it's like spreading the gospel of reading. Everyone's doing it, people. Margaret Cho
Everybody
is reading.
has to do it. You got to do
We
it.
all should be reading.
Yes.
It gives you joy and pleasure. Is there
That's
something
right.
about reading that brings you the most joy?
Well, it's intimate, because it's a conversation between you and the author, and so maybe that's why it's not as like sort of people don't talk about it as much. Although I think that they do now sort of on like social media and book talk and stuff like that, where people are really talking about reading. But it is just the quietest moment between you and somebody else, as words going into your brain, which I think is just incredible. We've been doing it for centuries.
Yeah. Oh, that's very true.
Yes.
Words going into our brain. What a special way to think about it.
The best.
Margaret Cho, fabulous guest gay reader. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Have a
And
wonderful
Millie.
And Millie. She's such a drama queen.
That girl.
Thank you, Rivers. Thank you, Margaret Cho. Incredible. Obsessed. Everyone go follow us on social media at Gays Reading. If you like and subscribe, if you like what you're hearing, share us with your friends, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. It means so much. Very helpful. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. See you next week. Bye.